Hello and welcome to the Hoop Collector podcast. We talk about the NBA, which we are doing in the middle of the night on Saturday night. Joining us from New York City, where he was at the Lakers game a couple of hours ago at Madison Square Garden, where they had a win to win their 8th out of 10 games. LeBron was great. Rich Paul, the agent for LeBron and AD, was there enjoying the game, is Tim Bontemps.
Hello, everybody. I'll just say that we've already had many sleep updates from Mr. Windhorst, and it's there are only going to be more of them by the time this emergency pod is done, which is what happens when you have the most shocking trade in the history of the NBA go down.
I'm boarding a flight at 5 a.m. and it's after whatever it is, but it's in a couple hours. I'm boarding a flight, which I was already pre-booked. I was already booked. I didn't scramble to book it. Joining us from Cleveland, Ohio, where he is going to be with the Mavericks tomorrow when they play when they play the Cleveland
Sometime.
Cavs. Not sure Anthony Davis is going to make it there. Is MacMahon.
Howdy, partners. You're going to get some old band sleep updates coming up pretty soon here.
You got that right.
This is I've got to tell you, did not see this coming.
You didn't see it coming?
MacMahon, the basketball world didn't see this trade coming. It's legitimately the most shocking trade in the history of the NBA.
And we'll get to the details. I knew there was real strong frustration with Luka Doncic within the Mavericks organization. I did not see trading a perennial MVP candidate who has yet to hit his prime. That's exactly what the Dallas Mavericks did late on a Saturday night.
Like, I talked to an executive tonight who said that he talked to Nico Harrison the past couple of days, and Nico was looking for a backup center. And this comes out of left field within a day or two after that. I mean, the fact that all of us, the general manager of the Mavericks, yes, the fact that all of us were getting text messages and calls asking if our colleague Shams Charania was hacked when he tweeted this out, which, by the way, props to Shams, because this is going to be one of the all-time gets to have this trade. And I've been thinking about it for the last hour or whatever. This is quite clearly the most shocking trade in the history of the league.
In the era of getting hacked and deep fakes, that was the thing. People were like, is Shams okay? So Shams was definitely okay. Okay, so MacMahon, you literally wrote the book on Luka. It's coming out in a few months. The Wonder Book.
I've got to figure some things out because the ending's a little bit different now.
Well, Luka's story isn't over. It's just a phase of his career.
Luka Doncic, not even 6 months ago, entered the NBA season as the favorite to win the MVP award. And he has been traded before that trade deadline. That is just a wild thing to think about.
So it's natural because the NBA universe, circles around the Lakers so often to look at this from the Lakers perspective, but we're not right now. We will in a minute. This MacMahon is about the Dallas Mavericks. And Luka is 25 years old. He's going to turn 26 in a few weeks, I think.
Turns 26 at the end of February.
He's been a first-team All-NBA player for the last 5 years. He won't make it this year because he's missed too many games, but first-team All-NBA player for 5 years. Carried the team into the finals last year. Definitely has his, warts, but regarded as one of the top 3 players in the league. If we did the exercise of ranking the most desired players in the league, he would be in the top 5. You debate about where you would put Victor or whatever because of his age. He'd be in the top 5, probably the top 3, but whatever.
Look, in NBA rank before the season started, he ranked second to Jokic.
Okay. I'd love to know what Jokic thinks tonight. So this is the Dallas Mavericks basically saying we want out of the Luka business. And before I hand it over to you, Luka is eligible. Well, he was eligible to sign, but this trade's going to cost him tens of millions of dollars, by the way,
Mhm.
because he can't sign the Supermax, but not to mention the tax difference between Texas and California. But Luka was in position to sign a 5-year, $300 million extension this summer.
About 345, but yes.
Okay, 350. So, and no one has ever not signed the Supermax. He's already qualified for it. No one has ever not signed it. So this wasn't the Mavericks. I mean, even if Luka,
I only mean to cut you. I don't mean to cut you off, but the only reason I want to say that isn't true is because the last guy in this position to get traded at this moment was Anthony Davis in 2019.
Yes, but Anthony Davis had asked for a trade.
Well, I understand that. I'm just saying Anthony Davis had indicated like he wasn't going to sign the Supermax. Is my point. Like he wasn't going to stay in New Orleans. He's the only other guy, and the fact that they got traded for each other is just one other wrinkle to this whole thing. That's all.
Okay. So correct me if I'm wrong, MacMahon. I don't think the Mavericks were concerned that Luka was not going to sign it.
I've obviously talked to some people with the Mavericks since this trade went down. They weren't certain, but their concern was the risk of signing him to that Supermax, of making a $350-ish million commitment. And this is basically the Mavericks saying they didn't believe that you could rely on Luka moving forward. This was I knew, and I talked a little bit about some of the frustrations within the organization about the conditioning. The quote unquote right wrist sprain. Again, he had a little wrist thing, but that was absolutely shutting him down so he could get in shape. He was playing in the high 260s this season. When he's in shape, he's 245 to 250. 255 is pretty normal. He was in the high 260s this season. They shut him down. He shed some weight. He had a really nice run like that. I mean, there was the game in San Francisco where he absolutely looked like MVP candidate Luka Doncic playing at that level. Then gets hurt again. And again, when these calf injuries, number one, he strained his calf before training camp. There was a contusion. That's what they reported. There was also a strain. Okay. I'm telling you that as a fact. So this calf strain has happened 4 times, same calf in the last 3 years, twice this season. And the reaction within the Mavericks wasn't like, geez, man, bad luck. It was, just extreme frustration that this is the result of not caring or not, taking the actions that show you care about things like diet and conditioning and lifestyle. Now, I get the frustration,
but he's 25. He's not 29 or 32. Like
I know. I'm just telling you kind of what the thinking was there. I am as shocked as anybody that they traded a 25-year-old who is clearly one of the best players in the world. But, again, Nico Harrison told me, this is a quote.
Yeah, read that quote. The quote he gave you on the record when people were still unsure if the trade was real.
Absolutely, yeah.
I believe that defense wins championships, and I believe that getting an all-defensive center and an all-NBA player with a defensive mindset gives us a better chance. We're built to win now and in the future.
Well, here's the thing. Like that's the basketball component of this trade from the Dallas part, right? Which I think is pretty fascinating and is an interesting thing to talk about. At the end of the day, though, we're starting with Dallas because Michael Lewis wrote this book called The Big Short on the financial crisis, right? This is the biggest short in the history of the NBA. The Dallas Mavericks are betting that Luka Doncic is not going to be the player that we all think he's going to be.
Well, and the player and frankly, the player that he has been.
Right, exactly. Well, has been and going forward, right?
Yeah.
This is a bet that he is not going to be worth the Supermax. He's not going to be a guy who wins MVPs. He's not going to be a guy that wins championships.
More than anything, it's a bet that he's not going to be available that often.
That's right. It's a bet against Luka Doncic, and it's a bet on going bigger with Anthony Davis up front, going defense first. It's a It's a bet on Kyrie Irving, which
For sure.
I mean, we've talked a lot about.
I guess Kyrie will be asking for the max this summer.
I would
MacMahon.
He's got some leverage.
He certainly got leverage. I mean, the basketball fit in Dallas is super interesting. And I think that's worth talking about. But again, like the reason this is so shocking is because guys like Luka Doncic at this stage of his career do not get traded. I will repeat that. These guys do not get traded ever in this situation.
No, like when James Harden got traded, he was a sixth man of the year and the third star on that team. Perennial first-team All-NBA players who have yet to hit their prime. We've never seen something like this.
And Anthony Davis is the last player of this caliber to get traded at this stage of his career. And to your point, Brian,
but that was a contract.
Well, Anthony Davis wanted to leave where he was at, right? And it asked, to your point, yes, he wasn't going to sign the Supermax, but that's because he and Rich Paul had made it crystal clear he didn't want to be in New Orleans. That is not what happened here. For all the frustrations that went on here, it's not like Luka Doncic said, "Get me out of Dallas."
No.
So the fact that the Mavericks have shorted him like this is why this is such a shocking trade, on top of all the other factors with the Lakers playing tonight, winning the game, all this other stuff floating around it. That's where this comes down to. It's that Dallas said Luka Doncic isn't worth it.
Well, and I've had multiple people within the Mavericks use the term held hostage as how they felt about being, the entire franchise relying on Luka with this looming $350 million commitment coming this summer. And they felt like there wasn't a good solution there, because you either sign him to that extension and, live in fear, or you don't, and he's not going to be around long term. Then you risk losing for nothing. Well, and go ahead.
Can I just say, option. And you guys, well, hold on real quick. You guys were there with me when this happened. When I ripped the hell out of Luka after game 3 of the finals last year. Which
that tunnel.
Well, the reason I was so frustrated in the moment was that he basically torpedoed his team, and I'd seen him do it before on the international stage several times. And I showed up the next 2 days, and I got jeered by the fans.
Right.
Said all kinds of crazy bleep to me, chanted my name or whatever after Luka was great in game 4. I heard nothing from the Mavericks.
No.
And from ownership through the front office to the coach, I was standing in the arena for 2 days on end. I wasn't dodging anybody. I went to the press conferences. I was in Luka's press conference. I was standing on the court. Nobody said anything to me.
Because everything you said were things that they had complained about repeatedly, were things they had.
Right, but that happens all the time. You say things all the time that you think are true, and agents and teams and they come to you and they they defend their person.
Yeah. Now,
right?
having said all this, for all the flaws, he was third in MVP voting last year. He's been first team All-NBA 5 straight years. As you said, if we're talking about the most talented players, the most valued players in the league, we ain't getting past one hand counting where Luka falls there. They felt like it was a massive risk going forward with him and making a Supermax commitment. To trade that type of talent is an astronomical risk.
Well, and listen, we have talked a lot about whether it's Kawhi Leonard, Joel Embiid, like these guys that have been in and out of the lineup, and there's questions about their health and everything else, right? The reason teams always bet, and have in the past always bet on these guys, is because there are only a few players of that talent on the planet. And typically you have to have one of them to win. And that is, that is why, again, it's like these trades just do not happen. And it's what's going to make it such a fascinating decision by the Mavericks because they are screaming from the rooftops, we didn't want to commit the rest of this decade to being the Luka Doncic Mavericks.
They thought
And you just don't ever see a
350
team
was a
in this
bad-
position. Yeah, they did. It's the big short. They have shorted Luka Doncic, and it's one of the most fascinating bets in the history of the league.
People, mock the Clippers for trading Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who might win the MVP this year, and saying, boy, my God, you guys traded an MVP. This isn't the same ballpark. Shai was a prospect.
It's not the same universe.
So think about, that the Clippers have to live every day knowing that they traded this guy away.
And it's like the Thunder when they traded Harden and he became, an MVP and a perennial first team All NBA player and the scoring champion, all that. But when they traded him, he was the third guy on that team and he was the sixth man of the year. He wasn't 5-time first team All NBA.
Shai was a prospect. So this is trading. Jackson has it here for us. This is the first time in NBA history where two reigning All-NBA players were traded for each other in the season.
Wow.
And here's the other thing I'm going to say. Okay, let's say they agree. Let's say they have an internal understanding, MacMahon, that they're going to trade him. I mean, it's a massive decision. It's the biggest decision in the history of the franchise. Right? You think that's wrong?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Okay. So it's the biggest decision in the history of the franchise. And they don't auction him. They obviously, now we'll say this background here. Nico Harrison was at Nike for 20 something years. When he was at Nike, Anthony Davis was one of his guys.
Yes.
Kobe was his number one, but Anthony Davis was right there.
And Jay Kidd's extremely tight with
Correct.
Anthony Davis from their time together with the Lakers. Michael Finley, a high-ranking executive, has a relationship with Anthony Davis as Chicago guys.
Chicago, yeah.
We had heard a few years ago, kind of bubblings of some levels of mutual interest between the Mavericks and Anthony Davis, but you hear things like that all the time, and it obviously didn't happen back then. But the relationships with Anthony Davis, there's some very, very, very strong relationship.
Right. So that's why they target him, right? But they don't.
Well, and there's also some basketball reasons too, which we'll get to.
I get that. But okay, so let's say they Bontemps. Okay, they target Anthony Davis. That's who they want. And we'll get to the Lakers side of this in a minute. But he can come in and play 4, which is what he wants. He can play next to Lively and Gafford. He can get his power forward, which is what he wants.
Well, Lively's out for most, if not all, the rest of the regular season. But yes.
Okay, but this is not a 1-year move.
By the way, just as before we continue, I was checking one stat, so it took me a while to pull it up on my computer. We'll do a little whiz of the quiz for a second.
And now to present today's trivia question, the whiz of the quiz, Tim Bontemps.
There are how many players? Let me rephrase this. There are 5 active players who have made at least 5 first-team All-NBAs. Who are they? Obviously, Luka's one of them.
Does Tatum? No, Tatum hasn't.
No.
KD, LeBron,
LeBron,
Steph.
Nope.
Chris Paul.
Nope.
Wow.
Steph hasn't made 5 first-team All-NBAs?
Nope.
That's an amazing
stat.
They've
both made 4.
Wow.
There's 2 others. KD, LeBron, Luka.
Joker?
He has not.
That's the center thing screwed up.
Jokic hasn't made 5 yet.
I think he's going to this year. I think. Well, he will this year, but he's only made
Harden.
4. Harden.
We're
And
missing
one more. There's one more. Another foreign guy.
Giannis.
Wow.
Wow.
All 4 of those other guys. The youngest one is 30. The other 3 are over. The other 3 are in their mid to late 30s or 40. This guy is 25.
Bontemps, you said it. This isn't the Big Short. This is the gargantuan, Titanic short. It's
the most shocking trade in the NBA in the history of the NBA.
Okay, so
it's
knowing
the biggest
that,
short in the history of the NBA.
So knowing the Lakers are acquiring a 25-year-old who's got one of the most decorated resumes in the history of the league at age 25, short of winning a championship. they've identified Anthony Davis. They don't get everything. Now, I understand why the Lakers are saying to the Mavericks, look, we are trading our franchise center. We already were looking for another center. Now we don't have a center. We have to hold back the 2031 pick. That's a fine negotiating position. They didn't get both first round picks the Lakers have to trade. They didn't get Austin Reeves, who's having.
Well, let me hold up on the Austin Reeves part, because in the financial position the Lakers were in, they couldn't necessarily get Austin Reeves in the construction of this deal. I actually think you can make an argument for the Lakers. Max Christie's a more valuable piece to get. Like, Max Christie has become a legitimate 3-and-D wing in the league.
Right, and his contract is very good. But
he's on a 4-year deal. Austin Reeves is a one-way player that's not a great fit with Kyrie. And when you look at what Dallas did on the court, you can take
Austin Reeves and you can move him somewhere else. He doesn't have to play for you.
Well, I understand. I'm saying financially, it's hard to get them both into trade. I would rather have Max Christie.
You have third teams. You could find. Well, okay, fine. Leave that out then. They don't get both picks. I mean, amazing. In other words, like, they were like, let's just do this deal.
If you have decided we can't rely on Luka, we have to move on from him, I think certainly there's an argument to be made of keeping that quiet and dealing with it in the summer. If you put him on the block in the summer, there's a lot of, okay, that's fine. There's no games being played. There's no practices, whatever. Summer drama is
but this is the thing.
Then you can create.
Well,
but guys, we're missing the point.
The Mavericks might think they can win the West this year.
Listen, the Mavericks do. The Mavericks do think they can win the West. This is very simple. The Mavericks said, we have a better, it's what you said, MacMahon. They believe they have a better chance of winning the title this year with this team than they did before. That's why you do the trade now.
And by the way, Max Christie is the exact kind of guy they've been searching around trying to find, is a guy who can be a primary on-ball defender.
Look, I asked JJ Redick tonight about Max Christie before the game. I talked to him about Max Christie's emergence as a guy who's become a consistent starter for the Lakers. He comes out tonight, he had 15 points. Jalen Brunson did not have a great game, in part because of the defense Max Christie was playing on him. And, the league is looking for 6'5", 6'6", two-way wings who can shoot and guard people. And Max Christie is turning into that kind of player. He's on a 4-year, $32 million deal. He's 21 years old. Like, he's a very valuable piece. And I think, I can see from that standpoint why they went and did this. Now, again,
this is trying to build the best defense possible. And this is them saying, hey, we can't build a dominant defense with Luka.
And when you look at the West,
but it is absolutely punning on, booting the most talented player in franchise history out the door.
Oh, listen, I'm not trying to say that I would do the trade. I'm just saying that, all this, they could have auctioned him off in the summer, but this wasn't about auctioning him off in the summer. Nico Harrison identified Anthony Davis, said, I would rather have Anthony Davis. I would rather have Max Christie. I agree. They probably could have they should have got both picks. I would have got both picks in the trade. But, they clearly are betting that Kyrie at the point with a ton of shooting and length around him, and then a ton of size in the paint, which, by the way, what have we talked about repeatedly with Oklahoma City? They struggle with size in the paint, right? Yeah. The Mavericks are now a huge team at every position other than Kyrie with the ball. So they've got long, athletic wings all over the place. They're playing big in the paint. They've got size to go up against Jokic. They've got size to go up against Memphis and Houston who want to brawl inside. They've clearly identified that this is a way they believe they can win. Now, what I would say is, if you make this trade, you damn well better win, because this is
better win now, because these guys are in their 30s.
That's what I'm saying. If you're shorting Luka like this group has got to win. There's no Nico could say what he wants about now and in the future. This ain't about in the future. This is, you've got Kyrie and you've got AD and you're trying to win today. not
Yeah.
in 5 years.
By the way,
Well-
since Max Christie went in the starting lineup, the Lakers are 15-8. Now, there's a lot of other factors in there.
Look, the guy's shooting 39% from three over that stretch, and he was really good tonight and has been really good for them for a while. I'm not trying to turn Max Christie into a superstar.
No, I understand.
I was getting
understand.
ready to talk
But-
about.
But
what
he's
you're
not
saying
just,
is-
he's not just a throw in.
What you're
No.
what you're saying is that they're not just using it to balance out the money. They viewed him as worth of maybe a first or even two. Still
Right.
though, you're trading a 25-year. Okay, let's switch over to the Lakers. Dave McMenamin and Shams both report that LeBron did not know.
Yeah.
I trust that reporting. I wonder when AD knew, and I'm gonna. Here's why I'm asking, because I had an executive hit me tonight, and he goes, because within an hour of the trade announcement, Bobby Marks had confirmed that AD had waived his trade kicker, which they still could have done the trade. So AD was getting a $6 million bonus for being traded. He waived it. That would have been paid by the Lakers, but would have gone on the Mavericks books. And the reason why that's interesting is because that keeps the Mavericks out of the luxury tax.
Yeah.
So it helps the Mavericks going forward here, potentially even doing something buyout wise at the deadline here. But
Well, it's certainly a sign that AD isn't against the trade.
well, that's for darn sure. But it makes you wonder when AD found out, because my guess is that that's a decision that doesn't.
Well, whether he
compute.
found out, whenever he found out, he might have found out. Nico might have called him and told him when everybody else found out. But not waiving that trade kicker is a clear indication that he's perfectly fine going to Dallas.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you know what? The thing with Luka and all the focus on the conditioning and, you know, that directly impacting the durability and all that kind of stuff. This is a massive slap in the face. Like, you are one of the best players at your age that's ever walked the face of the earth. And the team that had you said, we don't trust you. We don't want you. We're going to move on. If this doesn't get him to embrace the 24-hour, 365 day a year type of commitment that it takes to maximize your potential and to ensure your availability as much as possible, then nothing ever will. And hey,
That's what the Lakers are betting on, right?
he's got a hell of a role model in LeBron, right? But you know what? He had a hell of a role model in Dirk, and that didn't take as far as the diet, the conditioning, that kind of a commitment.
Well, look, 29 out of 30 teams would have made this trade. There's really not a lot to discuss about whether the Lakers would have done it or not. Like, the universal
wouldn't have made
reaction
it?
is the Mavericks.
Oh, okay. Would the
Every
Thunder
other
have made it?
team, every other
No.
team. I'm not saying the Thunder. You're misunderstanding what I'm saying. Every team in the league, if they get the call, which this clearly was a call from the Mavericks to the Lakers,
Yeah.
you can just look how it went. If you call and say, "Will you do this trade?" Every team in the league is doing this trade. Like,
The Thunder's interesting. I'm not certain about
but you're not.
All right,
You're
that's an academic
again,
argument.
That's not what I'm talking
Yeah.
about. I'm not talking about putting Luka on any team. I'm saying hypothetical team gets this call. Will you do this trade? Every team does this trade. Like, again, that's why it's the biggest.
I don't
short
think
in
every
the-
team does it, but I don't want to keep
You're
going.
not-
Yeah, go
I'm
on.
just talking about. I mean, again, it's not about the individual teams in the league. Like, across the NBA, the universal reaction is, I can't believe the Lakers got Luka Doncic. That's why it's the biggest short.
Yeah.
You short.
All right.
No one else would short this guy like this.
So the Lakers now, okay, so the Lakers made this move not for this season. The Lakers made this move for the next decade.
Yeah.
And I will say this, like Rob Pelinka for a couple of years now is like, we're waiting for the big fish. We're waiting for the big fish. And, people are prodding him, trade a first for Cam Johnson, trade a first for Jonas Valanciunas. And he's like, we're waiting for the big fish. We're waiting for the big fish. And there was lots of eye rolls what happened. So I will say this is a whale. So this is what he's waiting for. So now let me just say this, like Lakers have to, think about how they're going to approach having Luka. That's going to be an organizational thing. You know
Mhm.
that very well, MacMahon. They ought to hire MacMahon as a consultant.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Well, and he comes with his own medical team. He comes with his own nutritionist. He comes with a physiotherapist. He comes with his own strength coach.
well, LeBron came with people.
I know, and that's not unusual. There was some, again, there was a lot of frustration about a lot of things within the Mavericks, and the working relationship with that team, I don't think was with Luka's quote unquote body team was not the strongest.
I'm not sure I would put that on my
resume.
resume. I don't. Luka body team.
Well, it's been suggested to me that would be difficult to find other employment in that field given the results. But
All right. So what happens with LeBron here? And I don't know the answer.
it's what the fascinating thing is. This is not a trade like that immediately is like an easy fit for the Lakers. Like who's starting at center for him now? I don't know.
Jackson Hayes.
I mean, hey, how does like you said, this isn't about, hey, let's maximize the twilight of arguing.
Hey, listen, let's just be honest. They had to make room for Chris Wood. He's coming back soon. Had to clear it out.
Well, and I'm sure Luka's fired up to reunite with Christian Wood, but this is not about maximizing the twilight of this, all-time great who, by the way, had a 30-something point triple-double tonight. This is maybe even a step back from that, but it's about acquiring a guy who can be in that conversation among the greatest of the all-time greats.
Well, listen, during the game today, Dave McMenamin, Dan Wojcicki, and I, Dan Wojcicki from the LA Times, obviously we all know McTen and myself, were sitting on press row, and we spent the vast majority of the game debating who the Lakers could get with their 2 first-round picks. Now, we all basically thought it was an academic exercise because who's out there to get with the first-round picks? And I said, I don't think anybody's out there to get for the first-round picks that's going to make a difference. Obviously, none of us saw this coming, makes it very amusing, but the undercurrent of the whole discussion was the Lakers were not good enough to win a title this year. They might have got a matchup and won a series. Maybe they could have won 2 series if everything broke right with this current group. For as well as they've played, and JJ Redick has done a really good job, Max Christie has developed really well. They move on from D'Angelo Russell. They have Austin Reeves' hand on the ball. Like, all these things are true. JJ's maximized AD. AD's having a great year, but they weren't good enough. Mm-hmm. So this is an obvious move for them to get Luka Doncic at 25, to have him to build around going forward. And now the question is, can they put a team around him over the next 5 to 7 years that's good enough to actually be a repeat championship contender? Because look, LeBron James has been in LA for 7 years. For the last 4 of those years, yeah, the Lakers made a conference finals, but they have repeatedly shot themselves in the foot. And despite having AD and LeBron, not had a team that was consistently good enough to be a true championship contender. So the question now is, they have Luka Doncic, but what can they put with them, and what's the team going to look like?
You guys know how I feel. Winning a championship means never saying you're sorry. So, like, I didn't like some of the terms of the AD deal, which is not even done paying off yet.
That doesn't.
I had to retire that.
Yeah,
because
for sure.
Winning a championship means never saying you're sorry. So I stand on that, and I believe that. Having said that, 6+ years of AD and LeBron, AD in his prime, LeBron's still a high production. The Lakers, I wouldn't say they achieved the bare minimum, but they achieved the low end.
They won 2. They won 2 titles. They got a banner and a ribbon.
That's right. I was like, wait a minute, what? And I fell right into that trap. Good job. Okay, so that's one thing I'll say. Because that book is now being closed. The AD LeBron era. The second thing I'll say is, when AD went public last week with Shams saying basically, get me a center, putting Rob Pelinka on blast, it was further than he has gone before. LeBron does this annually. AD has not done this, unless my memory is flawed. He has not done this on the record in front of the camera saying, get me a center.
Yeah. And
I do think, had that not happened and the Lakers had a disappointing end of the season, which we all thought they were headed for the play-in, they were overachieving from that. I mean, we talked last week about how they were maybe overachieving a little bit. But whatever, if the Lakers didn't have a great finish to the season, I do think for the first time there could have been Anthony Davis getting a little agitated in the summer. So the Lakers might have felt a little tremor or two, but certainly, and maybe that, just greased this a little bit, going, well, as you said, Bontemps, there isn't a trade for them to do that was going to get Anthony Davis excited. Maybe that played some factor into why the Lakers were like, let's absolutely
no. What are you doing? The Lakers did this because of course they did.
No, I get that,
There's
but I'm just saying
debating it. They took the call and said, yes, we'll do the trade.
No, I understand, but there was a little bit of a tremor with AD. So
I don't think that had anything to do with this. If that hadn't happened, they would have done the same thing. The thing that I think is interesting to watch now, as I'm thinking about this in real time over the next 5 days, is Austin Reeves doesn't really fit with the Lakers anymore. And if I am the Lakers this week, I personally, as I react to this in real time and think about it, I'm thinking long and hard about trading Austin Reeves today. Because Austin Reeves right now is owed $12.9 million this year and $13.9 million next year. And then he's got a player option he ain't going to pick up the following year. And his trade value is probably never going to be higher than it is right now. And if you could turn him into some significant stuff, whether it's draft picks, whether it's maybe some size inside, which they now don't
maybe
have.
Somebody to play center.
I mean, I think that is a very interesting domino to watch over the next few days. Now, maybe they don't do anything with Austin Reeves. I don't have any reporting on this, to be clear. I'm not saying I know he's getting traded. I have no idea. But just thinking about it, if you have LeBron, Luka, and Austin Reeves, that's three guys who have the ball a lot, who aren't playing a lot of defense. And it's going to be hard to have a balanced team with all of them. And Austin Reeves' value is probably never going to be higher than it is on this contract for the next 18 months.
That's true, which is one of the reasons if I was Dallas, I would have gotten him because his value is high. But
I said, I would rather have Christie, I think.
I agree. And so, but let's get back to LeBron. I think until we hear from LeBron, as they said in Seinfeld, it's a pretty big matzo ball.
Yeah, it's a huge one. Now, having said that, LeBron has always been a massive fan of Luka.
Without question.
There's
question.
One of the chapters in the book that's coming out that I hope I can figure out a way to add to the ending is, begins with when LeBron and Luka played very early in Luka's rookie season, and they had that meeting in midcourt after the game, and the cameras caught it, and LeBron said, "You a bad mother," and LeBron, like LeBron's talked about, hey, he tried to sign Luka as like to his shoe line.
Yeah, LeBron doesn't have. By the way, like LeBron, it's not like the Jordan brand where they have a bunch of guys. LeBron doesn't have like athletes on his label.
He wanted Luka to be the first.
Right.
He's been a huge fan of Luka. How it works as a tandem is going to be fascinating.
I'll never forget. I guess I can tell this story now. So during the 2023 finals, the Denver finals, I got a call in the middle of game 2 from someone who would know that said that Kyrie, and this ended up getting reported. I think it was Shams actually at the time who was at The Athletic who reported it. But I got a call and said that Kyrie would really like LeBron to come to Dallas and play with him and Luka. And LeBron had an option in his contract. And, forget about all the machinations of what would have to happen. I mean, but, Kyrie was a free agent and LeBron was a free agent, could be a free agent. It wasn't impossible. And so the game ended and I walk into the arena, or into the bowl, I should say, and I run smack dab into Rich Paul. Now, this is kind of rare where you have a root trade rumor and then literally within 10 minutes, 15 minutes, you can speak to the face-to-face to the agent. I said, hey, listen, I just got this call and I heard that Kyrie, let's just say it was somebody associated with Kyrie, wants to play with LeBron in Dallas. And Rich says LeBron would love to play with Kyrie in LA. Have him come to LA, and he'd love to play with Luka in LA someday. Let's get Luka to LA. And of course, it went nowhere. Kyrie re-signed. LeBron's been a Laker. But one of the reasons Kyrie did that, did the reach out, was because of Luka being there. He saw that possibility. And that was the summer where the Lakers decided to re-sign their team instead of going after Kyrie.
Yeah, and this was also the summer that the Mavericks were coming off having just traded for Kyrie and ended up tanking the last week of the regular season because things went so haywire.
Right. So there is some LeBron, Luka. Kyrie doesn't try that move unless he knew that Luka would be a draw. So I definitely, but also there's the old 2 timeline thing. There's a 2 timeline thing here, so.
Well, there was already a 2 timeline thing though. Like LeBron after the game today, it feels like it was 500 years ago, but he openly called Anthony Davis their best player. Anthony Davis was 9 years younger than him. So it's not like yes, Luka's 15 years younger than him, but LeBron, it's not like the timeline lined up for this was going to work out for LeBron anyway.
Right, but the team was constructed the Lakers can look you square in the face. They can extend Luka this summer. They can't give him the supermax, but they can extend him. Whether Luka wants to do that or not, we'll see, because he's got 2 years left. But assuming that he does extend with the Lakers, I see no reason why he wouldn't. Lakers are going to have a runway where they're going to retrofit their team. And you say, Bontemps, about a Reeves trade. If there's a Reeves trade or they use the other pick, that's going to be to build around Luka. Obviously. So look, LeBron might come out tomorrow, or I don't know when the Lakers are available next. LeBron may come out tomorrow and be like, "Thank you very much, AD." He might tweet tonight, "Thank you very much, AD. Luka, I look forward to being with you and finishing out my career with you," and it's put to bed. But until we hear that, we haven't heard it. That's all.
That's all secondary though, really. It's one of the rare
it's
times.
It's not secondary if he says, maybe I need to look around.
But it is secondary because it doesn't matter. That's what I mean. It doesn't, whatever LeBron's reaction.
It does matter.
No, it doesn't. That's
what matters. If he wants to get traded to another team in the league right now, it might matter just a little bit to them.
That's again,
that's a real matter.
It matters in the aggregate. My point is, it doesn't matter to the Lakers. LeBron's reaction to the trade is irrelevant to the Lakers because they
apparently didn't tell him, if you're to believe that.
Yes, but that's what I mean. The Lakers do. If they had said to LeBron, "Hey LeBron, we have an offer to trade AD for Luka. What do you think?" LeBron says, "Guys, we got a great thing going. Team's rolling. Let's roll with AD."
Well, that may be, by the way, that may be one of the reasons why they didn't go to him, because they didn't want to have it on his plate.
I'm just saying, whether it was on his plate.
Right, but one of the reasons why you keep LeBron in the dark is, number one, he's now not your future anyway, and two, he has plausible deniability to say that I didn't ship AD out of town.
Yes, I agree. My point is only that. I agree. It was all hypothetical. My point is only that it doesn't matter what LeBron's opinion is, because if you're the Lakers, you have to do this trade every time. You have to make the bet on Luka Doncic.
But it matters now what LeBron's opinion is.
It matters to the league what LeBron's opinion is.
It also matters to the Lakers. I agree with you that you do the deal without, independent of LeBron, and you may even be doing him a favor by not going to him. But I think now his opinion matters. Because
yes, I agree. His opinion matters if he decides. Right. My point is only that if LeBron decides now he wants to get traded, what I'm saying is, and maybe I'm not making it clear enough, that shouldn't have precluded the Lakers from doing the trade, and it won't be a bad trade if LeBron decides he wants to leave now.
I agree. Okay.
That's all.
We don't know if it's a good or bad trade yet, but it could be one of the great trades in Laker history. But we'll see. MacMahon, where do we think the Mavericks stack up in the Western Conference? They've been sliding very badly with Luka.
I've said over and over and over again, if they get healthy, I still think they're dangerous, but this is a completely different team because, when you talked about the Mavericks as championship contenders, the number one reason that you put them in that category was because of this guy who last year led the entire postseason in points, rebounds, assists, and steals, which had never been done before. Again, they are betting that they can put together one of the NBA's best defenses, that bringing in Anthony Davis, that adding Max Christie, another on-ball defender, can allow them to build an elite defense. And then they're obviously betting on the health and durability of two stars in their 30s who have had their own pretty significant durability issues. Anthony Davis is banged up right now. Kyrie's managing this bulging disc in his back, and he's played 39 games this year, but he's got some stuff going on.
So let me ask you this: so now they have the Laker pick.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm not necessarily saying that you definitely trade Daniel Gafford or PJ Washington, but you could. You have Quentin Grimes, who's got value.
Mm-hmm.
You're under the aprons. I mean, hell, you got Klay Thompson.
Listen, if they can trade Luka Doncic, they can trade anybody.
Oh, you got that right.
I mean,
Are the Mavericks in position to? Are the Mavericks in position to make another move?
I'm never going to say that the Mavericks aren't in position to make another move, because one thing we've learned with Nico Harrison is they are always aggressive. They have made massive trades before every single trade deadline that he's been in charge of, dumping Kristaps Porzingis, getting Kyrie Irving at a massive discount, getting Daniel Gafford and
PJ Washington
and PJ Washington in separate deals last year. Now this
trades that got panned at the time, by the way.
Again. So Max Christie is the kind of guy that they've been hunting around for, because they need another. Like, they've asked PJ Washington to be their primary on-ball defender. That's putting probably a little bit too much on his plate. I think Max Christie can help fill that void. But yeah, I promise you that Nico's not going to stop charging his cell phone before the trade deadline. I think they are going to continue to be aggressive. They had the I'll say this, they had the Kyle Kuzma trade fall apart last year because of the mythical no trade clause. If they're trying to recreate as much of that Lakers title roster, he's certainly still available.
Well, looking at the Mavericks roster, again, I'm just trying to process this as we go along and think about it. They are very short now on shot creation. They really only have Kyrie. I mean, they have Spencer Dinwiddie.
Yeah, Dinwiddie's their second shot creator. Yeah, PJ has taken on some of that, but I agree with you.
It's part of why the team has been struggling. Now, obviously, they're about to get Anthony Davis. He will give them a ton of production, but he's not a shot creator. He's more of a play finisher. So, I mean, look, the other thing you got to think about, again, like, Derek Lively is an interesting trade piece over the next week. I mean, Derek Lively is hurt. We'll see if he can go back this year. Certainly, Derek Lively would have value in the market. They try to turn him into something. And, again, this is a Mavericks team that is trying to win right now. So maybe they can use Derek. Again, this is me just spitballing. It's not, to be clear, for the aggregators. But, like, it will be surprising if Dallas comes out of the trade deadline in 5 days and doesn't have another fairly good shot creator, you would think, on the roster, to try to give Kyrie some extra cushion, especially, like you said, MacMahon, not only is Kyrie a risky bet for all the reasons we've talked about over the years, but we're talking about a guy who's a smaller guard in his early 30s now who's got a back issue. Like, that is a lot to put on his plate. And if he's not able to go as this team is constructed, they're not going to really have any chance. So you got to assume there's going to be some sort of reinforcements there one way or the other over the next few days.
Well, and they're also, they can get involved in the buyout market now. Now,
yeah,
guys get bought out for a reason. I do think that the buyout market tends to be the most, like, overhyped thing that happens in the NBA world. But
I just thought of this. because of the new rules, anybody making over the average player salary, which is somewhere around 12 million or
12 and a half.
so,
Yeah.
is ineligible to be acquired by teams over the first apron. A guy who'd be unbelievable in Dallas if he gets bought out, and we'll see if he gets bought out, is Lonzo Ball.
Yeah.
And like, if Lonzo would obviously be a guy that could walk on this team, also clutch guy, but that, just thinking about it again, like he would be a tremendous fit with this team. So yeah, look, they got a lot of different avenues they can go in. They've got picks they can throw in trades. They've got some interesting mid-level salaries to move around. They got a lot of stuff they can do. You'd have to assume they're going to add some other shot creator over the next week to try to give them some more scoring punch now that Luka's out the door.
Yeah. All right. Well, there's a lot more to come. And we'll be talking about it. And we got to get Jackson at some point to bed here. So thank you. Great reporting tonight, MacMahon. More in the future. Thank you very much, Mr. Bontemps. Thank you to Jackson and Rafa, our producers. Thank you for listening and watching Hoop Collective. They just called my group, so I think I got to go board. We'll talk to you soon.
Adios, amigos.
Adios, Luka.
Adios, that amigo for sure.